Are you excited to see these handsome men and women? Don't you think they are beautiful and very sexy? In fact, not only human beings, many animals also have eyes for beauty. Why do peacocks evolve beautiful tails? Why do butterflies become more and more colorful? And why do male lions have longer and longer hair? It seems to be a very simple question. It is because they are beautiful to look at and attract the eyes of the opposite sex. But this question was difficult for Darwin in the 19th century. In 1860 Darwin had just published his masterpiece, The Origin of Species, which used natural selection to explain how the world's various species had become the ever-changing creatures they are now. But natural selection had one major problem that was hard to explain. The brighter the color of an animal, the more likely it was to attract the attention of predators. The longer the peacock's feathers, the prettier they are, but they are of no use at all in the face of natural selection, even a burden. Nature's predators won't leave you alone just because you're pretty. Instead, you're more conspicuous and more likely to attract the attention of predators. After a decade of contemplation, Darwin published his second major work, The Descent of Man, and Selection in Relation to Sex, in which he formally introduced the theory of sexual selection for the first time. Darwin attributed the evolution of beautiful bodies in animals to the fact that the forces driving species evolution encompass not merely natural selection, but also the aesthetic preferences of animals. He explained that the flamboyant and seemingly useless traits evolved by all organisms in nature have but one purpose: to attract the opposite sex. Darwin further classified sexual selection into two types, intersexual selection and intersexual selection. Put simply, intersexual selection occurs within the same sex, exemplified by two male lions fiercely battling it out, with the winner securing a group of female companions while the loser faces a life of solitude. This explains why many mammals engage in fierce competition during the breeding season. Intersexual selection, on the other hand, is much more civilized. Instead of resorting to violence, individuals showcase their talents through singing, dancing, and displaying colorful plumage, waiting to be chosen by the opposite sex. Many bird species prefer this approach. Male animals tend to be more aggressive, competing based on strength, physical fitness, and fighting prowess. This ensures that their offspring inherit their genes and are better equipped to face the challenges of natural selection. However, this explanation becomes less convincing when applied to the dynamics between different genders. The reason is that the evolutionary direction is ultimately determined by the aesthetic preferences of the opposite sex. After proposing this theory, Darwin immediately faced opposition from other influential figures. At that time, people looked down upon the idea, thinking, alright, maybe tigers and chimpanzees have aesthetic preferences, but a butterfly too? One of these dissenters was Alfred Russel Wallace, who co-authored On the Origin of Species with Darwin. The book On the Origin of Species was so successful that Darwin became a household name worldwide. As a junior colleague, Wallace was deeply grateful to Darwin for his recognition and support, and he remained a steadfast ally of Darwin, firmly identifying himself as a Darwinist. However, Wallace's understanding of natural selection was not entirely in line with Darwin's. To Wallace, natural selection was a comprehensive theory that eliminated all variations that were ill-suited to the environment. Organisms, under the pressure of survival imposed by natural selection, must evolve traits that enable them to adapt to their surroundings. In contrast, Darwin believed that biological evolution was not solely about adaptation to the environment. Competition among species was also a crucial driving force behind evolution. From a modern perspective, Darwin's ideas are considered more advanced and in line with reality. However, Wallace struggled to accept this, believing that literature, art, humor, and aesthetics were uniquely human attributes. Therefore, when Darwin suggested that lower animals also possessed aesthetic sense, Wallace attributed it to Darwin's advancing age and declining mental clarity. According to Wallace, the reason organisms become beautiful is due to an inherent tendency towards beauty in biological evolution. He questioned why female peacocks couldn't evolve to be beautiful, arguing that since female peacocks are responsible for nurturing their offspring, natural selection would eliminate those with ornamental features. Regarding why male peacocks evolved to be beautiful, Wallace believed it was more of a manifestation of nature's essence or a byproduct of physiological processes that synthesize pigments. While he did not completely dismiss the role of sexual selection, he leaned towards the idea that these colors served multiple functions, such as warning, attracting, e.g. bright flowers attracting bees and butterflies for pollination, and species recognition. Later, Wallace adopted a more strategic approach, stating that the real reason animals evolved to have attractive appearances was to reflect their physical health. In layman's terms, animals prefer attractive mates not because of some abstract notion of aesthetics, but because beauty often signifies good health. This attractive trait is then passed down through generations. Upon its introduction, this theory gained widespread acceptance, and for decades thereafter, the original intention behind Darwin's sexual selection was largely forgotten. The primary reason Darwin's theory was not readily embraced was that individuals have diverse definitions of beauty. Just as preferences for colors vary widely, with some favoring blue, others green, and still others red, so too do people's perceptions of beauty differ. This chaotic diversity in preferences poses a challenge, and if Darwin's theory were to hold true, it could potentially lead to outcomes that are counterintuitive to the principle of adaptation to nature. Until 1915, mathematician and geneticist Ronald Elmer Fisher proposed the Fisherian runaway hypothesis, in which he demonstrated how evolution can gradually lead to outcomes that contradict natural selection. Fisher argued that female animals' preferences stem from genes and are therefore heritable. If a female animal prefers brightly colored males, their offspring will necessarily inherit genes from both parents. This implies that a beautiful male is likely to carry such genes, and his male offspring will have a higher probability of being attractive. Female offspring will also inherit these genes, but since they are females, the trait may not manifest visibly. Additionally, their preferences for brightly colored and attractive mates will also be inherited. The more vibrant the color, the more attractive it is to potential mates, leading to more offspring. This process is repeated generation after generation, reinforcing the notion, and the birds of paradise, for example, become increasingly beautiful until they reach a point of losing control, accumulating unnecessary traits that hinder their adaptability to nature. As for why they initially preferred colors, this has little to do with natural selection. Sexual selection takes the lead. Even if vibrant colors serve no practical purpose, they elicit an emotional response in the opposite sex, making them appear more desirable and sexually appealing. This theory successfully revived Darwin's sexual selection theory. Although this theory explains Darwin's theory, those who adhere to Wallace's theory have differing opinions. In 1975, biologist Ahmad Zahavi expanded upon Wallace's theory by introducing the handicap principle. Zahavi posits that beauty, which may seem superficially inconsequential, actually reflects superior genes. Being attractive can draw predators, yet individuals who survive despite this indicate exceptional physical fitness. It's akin to someone carrying an extra 50 kilograms, 100 pounds, and still outrunning you in a race. The only explanation is that they possess far superior physical conditioning. Thus, such apparent burdens, like luxuries, come with a high cost, but signify strength. Consequently, animals' increasing beauty is not a case of runaway evolution, but remains under the purview of natural selection. The sexy sun hypothesis, rooted in Fisher's runaway hypothesis, also supplements theories of adaptation. What is the sexy son hypothesis? It's straightforward. If an individual is attractive and popular among the opposite sex, their offspring will inherit their genes. Furthermore, according to the runaway aspect of Fisher's theory, their son may inherit an even more alluring appearance, making him even more desirable and thus likely to have more offspring. In this way, their genes are disseminated even further. From this perspective, attractiveness serves a highly functional and valuable purpose. At this point, a crucial question remains unaddressed: what constitutes beauty? Why do vibrant colors represent beauty rather than black, white, or gray? Before delving into this question, it's essential to acknowledge that animals, as sentient beings, possess their own preferences and make various choices in their ongoing struggle for survival. Let's hypothesize a butterfly population where preferences are randomly distributed, with some butterflies favoring white, others gray, and still others colorful hues. However, random distribution does not equate to complete evenness. One color will inevitably hold a slight advantage, being slightly more popular among the population than the other two. This slight advantage is sufficient to trigger a cascade of effects. According to the sexy son hypothesis, individuals with this preferred coloration will have stronger genetic dissemination capabilities, resulting in a larger proportion of offspring inheriting this trait in the next generation. These offspring, in turn, will be even more popular, creating a positive feedback loop where popularity leads to wider gene dissemination, further enhancing popularity. In Fisher's runaway selection scenario, individual aesthetic preferences are continuously amplified, ultimately leading to a uniform standard of beauty across the entire population. As you can see, the standard of beauty was not initially uniform or necessarily more adaptive to the environment. Rather, it emerged by chance, with a slight advantage among the ancestors of a species. And this is not limited to beauty alone. Various genetic mutations throughout the body, amplified by Fisher's runaway selection, lead to increasing divergence between species, evolving in different directions. As long as this evolution does not lead to inevitable extinction, it will continue, resulting in the diversity of species we see today. What use did feathers serve in dinosaurs at the time of their evolution? They couldn't fly, nor did they make them run faster. In fact, they might have been a burden. However, looking at the ubiquitous birds today, we understand their significance, though dinosaurs of that era could not have foreseen it. Without those vain dinosaurs, there would be no birds today. When we set aside pragmatism, beauty itself holds value, and so do the intangible realms of literature, art, mathematics, entertainment, and more.